Rob Fowler and Brian Callie are back with updates on the latest about reopening from the governor's office. We also have the president of KTM Industries, Tim Colonese, talking about the challenges of running a business today and more news. I'm Lisa Smith, and this is Focus on Business. Rob, Brian, Tim Colonese, welcome to the show. Thanks for making yourselves available yet again today. There has been a tremendous amount going on. Let me just say to viewers that the show is taped on Thursday and airs on Sunday. So today we're very excited because some things have happened in real time. I'm sure that we'll see some things in the news, but we definitely want to get to the latest executive orders by Governor Whitmer. So there's some changes. These are big changes. Some of you are already enjoying these changes, but let's just go over them and review them for the business perspective as well.
So starting out with on Monday of last week, the governor came out with a couple of new executive orders, and they were pretty big moves. One of them was a new stay home, stay safe order, which opened up regions 6 and region 8 to restaurants at 50% capacity, and retail more broadly with some capacity limitations, along with some office, and easing up on the restriction of small groups of 10 people or fewer. Now, region 8 is all of the Upper Peninsula. Region 6 is the northern Lower Peninsula. So that happened on Monday. And then also at the same time, the worker safety rules were moved into their own executive order, and it laid out for a lot of different industries what the rules are or what they will be when they are later opened up. So we went to work and we studied on those. In fact, at the Small Business Association of Michigan, we put together a template for a COVID-19 preparedness and response plan that small businesses could use to put their plans for reopening together. But just a few days after that, there was those two executive orders were rescinded and replaced with some additional changes. So remember that the first two were just for those northern Michigan regions, but also some additional changes are being made now for the rest of the state. And that would include, first of all, medical and dental services, along with veterinarian services for your pets. The executive orders that were limiting those before to only emergency essential services have been rescinded, and now new workplace safety guidelines are put in place for those. So if you had a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment that was put off before, as of May 29th at 12:01 a.m., those are open. Those will be open again, or at least they're allowed to open. So you should probably expect to get a call. I know I had a dentist appointment that was canceled, and so I'm looking forward to getting that resumed pretty soon. But also, in addition to that, statewide, that the groups of 10 or fewer are being allowed, and those would be allowed as of May 26th at 12:01 a.m. So I don't know how many people are going to have a party at 12:01 a.m. You know, honestly, Lisa, this part of the rules, small groups and people getting together in their homes, those things were widely happening anyway. And I think the governor is acknowledging that by just eliminating the small group rule in the first place. And then retail by appointment, auto sales by appointment also allowed statewide starting May 26th. So all of those changes happened this week, a lot to keep track of. But if there's one message for small business owners out there that I'd like to impress upon you, is that every single business must have a written COVID-19 preparedness and response plan. And there's a lot to it. It's not an insignificant undertaking. And so we are really encouraging small business owners to either do it on your own, or maybe start with a template that the Small Business Association has at our website, and put this together and make sure that you have all the rules in place that you have to, so that so that either you can take advantage of these openings that are allowed now, or be in the best position to open up as soon as your industry is green lighted.
Yeah, and the chances of your plan ever getting looked at by anybody is actually probably pretty low, unless you had some strange thing happen with an employee or something. But the fact that it's a template is so helpful. I've used a lot of checklists and templates through this pandemic crisis to manage my business. We don't have an HR director. A lot of small businesses don't. I mean, we're all going to wear those hats. And so having those kinds of tools has just been really helpful. I'm just going to go ahead and say that's at sbm.org. Is that correct?
That's right. It's at sbm.org. And, you brought up enforcement, and I think that bears a mention as well, because we got a little bit of insight in these executive orders and how enforcement is going to be carried out. And it's moving from the criminal justice system, which is kind of how it was handled in the beginning or intended to be handled. It's moving over to the departments, the regulatory departments for enforcement. But I don't think that there's going to be a lot of proactive enforcement in terms of they're not going to knock on your door and say, hey, I want to see your COVID-19 preparedness and response plan. However, they will be responding to complaints. And where do complaints come from? They could come from your customers or from your employees. And I think the employee complaints into OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health regulatory part of state government, when they receive a complaint from an employee, that's what's going to trigger them to investigate and ask for your plan and see whether you're following the rules.
Yeah, well, that's very helpful information. I mean, I'm seeing on the news that it might be coming from your employee about your customers or vice versa if people don't want to comply. So just having it written down, this is what good looks like, this is what our expectations are, and we're going to enforce it to the best of our ability is always a good idea. Employees, I'm just going to switch gears here a little bit. We have Tim Colonese as a guest. Thank you for coming and joining the show today. Tim is the president of KTM Industries, which is one of my favorite companies. They produce environmentally friendly packaging materials called green cell foam. And Tim, I know that you have been a essential industry the entire pandemic time. You've stayed open, but I wanted you to come on and talk about what's going on and employees and getting people back to work and ramping up, because I think your story is probably going to be felt by other business owners that are trying to recruit, retain, and get back to work. So I'm going to leave it to you. Tell us your story about what's going on right now with your employment pursuits.
Sounds good, Lisa. Thanks for having me on. This has been quite a ride. As an essential services company, we've been operating through this entire time, and it's so fluid. I mean, I've been watching the show over the last several weeks and watching you and Brian and Rob talk about all the different changes going on. We've had to try to react and be proactive in the same regard to having a plan, making sure that we keep people safe, taking care of our customers. A lot of fear that has gone through the media, and that of course translates to employees. So a lot of employees earlier on just didn't want to come into work. They were scared, and we had to continuously try to get them to encourage them to come back. We've had to go to special weekly bonuses just to try to give them a little incentive financially to come back. You can see what we're doing every day by taking temperatures when they come in the door, making sure there are masks. We buy masks and help them out with that. There's all sorts of cleaning and disinfecting going throughout the joint. So there's a lot of things that we've needed to do to visually show them that we are caring for their safety. It's still an issue right now. And so as our business ramps up, we're one of the lucky ones that have seen a little bit of a bump in business, and we need more employees. It's been very difficult to get people to come in through the traditional manners. So we've had to go to radio. We went on the local television station, and they were kind enough to do a segment. We held a job fair last Saturday, had really good attendance on that. We have another one that we're doing this Saturday, and we're going to continue to give the financial incentives for people to come in. But it's a real challenge right now. You would think that, I believe this morning I heard it was 22.7% unemployment in the state of Michigan. And you would think that with basically 1 out of every 4 people in the state unemployed, you could get them to come back in. And that's not the case right now. We're working very hard to find people to apply and to show up for jobs every day.
So Tim, I happen to have, in our prep for the show, I learned that even your job fair had very clear guidelines about show up with a mask, and we will guide you through the job fair with social distancing. I mean, even in your radio commercial, you were talking about how safe it was to come to the job fair before you even get to the job. So that really speaks to the state of mind that employees are coming. Are you seeing a change over now in people thinking, okay, I probably better get settled and get myself a job now? What is the mindset out there of the people? You had dozens of people show up at your job fair. What was that mindset overall that you're seeing?
Well, we had people come in with the masks. We made sure that they waited outside 6 feet away from one another at least. We brought them in one at a time, properly masked. Talked to most people. They're starting to loosen up a little bit. There was a lot of questions about what are we doing in order to keep people safe. I think that there's still not enough information out in the marketplace right now, in the press, where people are talking about who really is at risk with this. The elderly, the ones that have some sort of compromised immune system. And so a lot of people are thinking, hey, I can get this. Even though they're young and healthy and they're really out of harm's way, there's still a lot of fear out there.
So I wanted to touch on one more thing with you, Tim, and that was, has the financial incentives for staying home, the additional $600 a week, has that impacted your workforce at all?
Being an essential services provider, we have not laid anybody off. If we had started laying off people, then everybody would have want to be laid off at an effective rate of $24 an hour to stay home. That's a pretty solid incentive for people just to stay away. I think that's one of the problems that we're having right now in trying to get people to come back and get a job, is that if they're making more money sitting home than they are coming out and working.
Yes, I have friends who own companies who are experiencing that very issue. I heard the first week of the Stay Home, Stay Safe order, I heard a national program, a gentleman said on it, this is going to be the largest transfer of wealth in the history of America. And maybe that $24 an hour is that kind of slow surge toward transferring some wealth here. But I'm glad it's not been a roadblock for you. I hope it's not for others. And I think we're just inching much closer to normalcy. Is there any final thoughts that you'd want to give to an employer right now that you've learned?
Well, you just have to stay on top of it. You have to make sure that your rules and your policies are put in place and rigorously enforced. You have to continuously work with your team and make sure that safety is number one. That's my best advice.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for making such a fantastic product and being a great member of the small business community. We thank you for being on the show.
Yes,
All right.
thanks, Lisa.
We have a lot to talk about yet. There's been a new form that has come out for the Paycheck Protection Loan forgiveness from the bankers. So, Rob, I know you have some information on that. What are you hearing?
Well, I think we've all been eagerly anticipating some guidance to come from the U.S. Department of Treasury. Let me put this in a little bit of context. There are a little over 110,000 businesses in Michigan who've gotten the Paycheck Protection Program. This is what we've described as, in some cases, a lifeline for small businesses. And so a lot of companies who have the essential deal is you take out a loan, and if you spend it, 75% for payroll, 25% for eligible expenses, it's forgiven. It is a grant. But a lot of companies took the loan not necessarily knowing what the rules were for forgiveness. And so what we've been waiting for is this guidance and ultimately the application for forgiveness. Some companies who applied for this early on, it covers an 8-week period. And some who applied early on are coming up upon the end of that 8-week period and need to really understand what it's going to take for it to become forgiven, given to a grant. So earlier this week, we got that guidance. Banks now have that. The application is available on our website at sbam.org. We've also done a webinar on it, and that is available on our website as well. It gets a little tricky. It's like filling out a tax form, so probably talk to your financial advisor. And I would say avail yourself of the resources available on the SBAM website.
Yes, I actually scheduled, this is a couple of weeks ago, I scheduled a session with my accountant to start to figure out some calculations. And he actually said to me, I think you're getting a little too granular right now because we don't even know what the rules are. So I relaxed a little bit, but now I'm seeing this form. I actually got, I follow, oh my goodness, I follow so many different sites and experts on this. So I got the forgiveness document from my banker. In the same day, I got an email from the SBDC saying that this is final, but it's not really final because Congress is currently debating possible rule changes. So should I fill out this form or should I wait? I'm about midway through my forgiveness period right now. What's your opinion about that?
Well, it's one of the great dilemmas that I think a lot of small businesses have, and that is, even as it was coming along, you may recall, there were 2 waves of the Paycheck Protection Program, and $350 billion in the first wave was spent pretty quickly, or ran out pretty quickly, and then there was first a rumor, and then looked like the Congress might actually do something, and then ultimately they did. And I feel like we're in a little bit of that same spot for changing the rules on forgiveness. The Congress is considering changing those rules, giving some additional time, rather than just the 8 weeks, changing the 75% must be spent on payroll rule, giving some additional flexibility. But for the moment, those are just considerations by the Congress. And I think, I think the best advice is, if you have a PPP, you probably need to work towards the rules that are in place today, with a hope, but not an expectation that the Congress is going to change it in time for you.
All right, good advice. Always be prepared. And it sounds like the rules that Congress is considering changing are actually going to relax things a little bit, which is better, not tighter. So I guess the overall message is we can relax a little bit here. Today, again, Thursday is when we tape the show. Sunday is when you would watch the show. There's been some things that have happened. There's an update on the suit against Governor Whitmer by our legislature. Brian, what is happening there?
We saw a decision by the Judge Cynthia Stevens in the Court of Claims that basically upheld the governor's ability to enact the emergency orders that she has enacted. And basically the conflict there are 2 different laws. One required legislative approval for extensions of the emergency powers of the governor. The other one was from 1976. The other one was from 1945 that did not require a legislative approval for extension of emergency powers. And so that was really the question. The legislature had asked the court to consider whether or not the governor could move forward with emergency powers without legislative approval beyond 28 days. And what she said was, well, under the 1976 law, the governor cannot extend powers, but under the 1945 law, she could. So even though it was, say, a 50% win for the governor, that 50% gives her the authority to do 100% of the things that she has done. Now, that is a court of original jurisdiction. That means it's the first stop along the way. It will be appealed almost certainly, and it'll be the Michigan Supreme Court that has the final say on this. But it was a pretty big week. We expected that decision to come this week, and at the same time, there was a local court in Shiawassee County that was asked by the Attorney General's office to issue a restraining order against Carl Menke, who's the barber who has been open now for a few weeks. And that local court, though, said, no, we will not shut down or allow the state to shut down this barbershop ahead of a trial that he's entitled to. So in other words, the barber will continue to operate if he so chooses until they go through an entire trial process. And but the governor's emergency powers will continue as well unless the Michigan Supreme Court says otherwise.
Well, that's a lot going on. I don't think I'm going to go get a haircut, but some people can. I wonder if the guy's going to be pretty busy between now and then. I happened to see a story about that as well in the news. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a great plan for this holiday weekend. I know I plan on doing a little barbecuing, and it's going to be some decent weather. So until next week, gentlemen, have a wonderful day. And as Brian and Rob would say, wash your hands and don't touch your face.
As we all prepare for business to reopen, we want to keep our workers and our customers safe. And so the governor has given us some guidelines and, in fact, rules that we need to abide by. Some of those rules technology can help with. One of the things that we need to do is track our employees and find out how they're feeling. So what our approach is this: we've taken a Microsoft Office 365 environment, and we've created a form inside that environment that all users, all employees get to access. They can access it on their phone, and they can access it on their computer. They'll get a daily email that's done with automation, and inside that email is specific guidelines that we want them to follow, and in there is a link that they can click to give a self-assessment. Now, this survey that we've created takes about 30 seconds and asks 5 questions around: how are you feeling? Do you have a fever? Do you have these symptoms? Have you traveled outside of the state of Michigan? Have you been around anyone that's been diagnosed with COVID-19? And 30 seconds and they're done. That data then goes into a Microsoft Forms database, and the Forms owner gets to view it. If that worker says, yes, I have symptoms, or yes, I've been around someone who's been exposed, that triggers an alert to HR. Also triggers an alert to the employee that says, you told us this is what we want you to do. So all that stuff has been customized to say the words that we want to say. Second piece of this is that we're required to provide workers with training around workplace infection control and proper use of PPE and what is PPE, and how to report unsafe working conditions or steps to take to notify someone that you don't feel well. So we've created a less than 30 second animated fun video with music that walks workers through that. Now, in our daily email to them, we also include a link to that training, which lives in Microsoft Stream, also inside the Microsoft environment. So the system that we've built, if you have Office 365, is a great system. We'd love to help you get it running on within your environment. you can reach out to me on our website. Go to makingtecheasy.com. That's www.makingtecheasy.com. Go to the contact page. We're also going to put a link up there to, that talks about the COVID assessments and how you can participate. Join us on that, and we will help you get going. Hope this helped.
Focus on Tech, brought to you by Providence, making technology easier.
This is Denise Policello with Focus on Law. Today, business interruption insurance. What is it? Do you have it? And do you really need to make a claim right now if you do? So business interruption insurance does exactly what it sounds like it does. It covers business losses from interruptions to your business, your inability to get on your property or conduct business from things like civil unrest or potentially pandemics. The thing is, you may not have it automatically. It's usually an add-on or an option. It's not usually part of your general liability coverage. So get a full copy of your policy and take a good look to see if you do. If you do have business interruption coverage, also be sure that you're reading the exclusions, because there are probably numerous exclusions that will try at least to prevent you from collecting on this claim. If you do have business interruption coverage and you're thinking about making a claim, you also need to very carefully document all of the proof of all of your losses due to this pandemic. Be meticulous about it, collect as much proof as possible, emails, documents, photos, anything you can, and put them in a file and keep that safe. Also, really analyze the cost and benefit of filing a claim at this time. If your loss is technically survivable, remember that you're likely to get a denial or pushback from the insurance company at least the first or second time. You may need to hire an attorney who's an expert in insurance claims to help you. This will take some time. It won't be immediate. So do the cost-benefit analysis and see if it's really worth it right now. Also remember that there may be legislative relief on the way. We don't know yet. There has been legislation introduced in Michigan and in numerous other states that would provide coverage for businesses due to pandemic losses, but nothing has come of this yet. So keep an eye on the legislation, track all of your losses, think about the cost-benefit analysis, stay safe and stay healthy.
Focus on Law, brought to you by Policella and Associates, PLLC.
Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next Sunday.